Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, today we are really testing the limits of what you might consider reality. And I don't mean that in some sort of abstract philosophical sense.
No, definitely not.
I mean the actual physical stability of the objects in the room with you right now.
Yeah, we really are going there. Usually, we're looking at productivity hacks or tech trends, things that are concrete, measurable.
Yeah.
But today we are basically telling you a ghost story.
But see, that's the thing. It's not the standard kind of ghost story where, like, a door creaks open or a cold breeze blows through the hallway and everybody just runs away screaming.
No, this is much more, it's aggressive. It's physical.
Right. It's a story about a piece of furniture, a heavy, solid wooden table that just decided it had absolutely had enough.
It's honestly one of the most physically intense accounts in the entire archive we have.
So I want you to picture this for a second. Put yourself right in the scene. It is 1967, Elmira, New York. You're sitting in a calm living room. It's just a group of friends sitting around, chatting about the holidays, completely normal vibes. And right in the middle of the room is this totally ordinary wooden table. And then, suddenly, crack.
And it's not just a loud noise. It is a complete structural failure.
Yeah, the table doesn't just tip over. It physically shatters into pieces.
From a completely invisible force.
Exactly, from a force that nobody touched, nobody pushed, but everybody in the room felt. It's kind of like furniture abuse, but the furniture started it. Or finished it, I guess.
It's a remarkable case. And what makes this a true deep dive, rather than just some spooky campfire story, in the documentation. We aren't relying on, a rumor or a story a friend of a friend told.
Right.
We're looking at contemporaneous notes written by people who were actively trying to figure out the actual physics of what was happening.
Right. But before we get into all the flying tables and the shattered wood and that really uncomfortable psychological roasting that happens afterwards, we do need to handle a quick bit of housekeeping.
Oh, right. We should mention that up front. So, just to be completely clear for everyone listening, this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
And we are pulling from a very specific, heavily documented source today. We didn't just Google poltergeist stories.
No, we absolutely did not. We are diving straight into the early sessions book 8 of the Ceph material. Specifically, we are laser-focused on session 381.
Which has a date of record of November 24th, 1967.
And we definitely want to credit the Ceph material and the publisher, which is New Awareness Network, for this remarkable record.
Absolutely. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore this documented case of psychokinesis, mind over matter. But we don't just care about the wow factor of a heavy table moving. We really want to understand the why.
Because right after the table was completely destroyed, a channeling session happened that explained exactly what was going on.
And let me tell you, the explanation is way scarier and weirdly a lot more inspiring than the actual physical breaking of the table.
It really challenges your entire view of who you are and what you're actually capable of. It suggests that we were all walking around with something incredibly powerful and maybe a little dangerous right inside us.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We really have to set the stage properly because this isn't just one night of craziness. It's a two-part saga. It all starts on a Wednesday night, November 2010th, 1967.
Right, the context is super important here. It's the day before Thanksgiving. So the vibe in the room is not some dark occult ritual. The vibe is holiday break.
Just chilling out.
Exactly. You have Jane Roberts, who's the medium for Seth, and her husband Rob, who we often know as Joseph in the transcripts. And they're joined by two college students, Claire and Carl, who are just home for the Thanksgiving break.
I just love the vibe check here. It's so unplanned. They aren't sitting around in robes with candles burning, chanting in Latin. They're just hanging out in the living room, probably smelling stuffing prep or pumpkin pie from the kitchen.
Totally domestic. They're just sitting around a table that they had designated for ESP classes. Now, this specific table already has a bit of reputation.
Oh, yeah, it does.
It belongs to one of Jane's students, and poor Rob had actually just repaired it a week prior because it got damaged in a previous session.
So this table is already a veteran of the psychic wars. It's seen some action.
It had literal battle scars. And on this Wednesday night, the table manifests the personality. They call him AA.
AA sounds like a battery size. Or a support group. Is that a code name?
Close. It stands for Alexander Anare. We find out a bit later in the text that he was apparently a lawyer who died in 1906. But the interesting thing about A, and the reason he matters so much to this specific story, is his personality. He was apparently fascinated by manipulating physical matter.
Which is just a very polite academic way of saying he really likes to break stuff.
Or at least move it around with extreme gusto. He was a highly kinetic personality. Some spirits want to talk deep philosophy. Alexander wants to move the furniture.
I mean, we all have hobbies.
Right. So the table starts moving. And we are not talking about a little wobble like when you have a loose leg on a cafe table and your coffee spills. Rob actually describes it dancing Irish jigs.
Just picture that for a second.
Huh.
A solid wooden table doing a jig. That's almost cartoonish. It sounds like something straight out of Beauty and the Beast.
It really is. It's vaulting into the air. It's twisting around. But here is where it gets incredibly interesting from an analytical standpoint. This group, Rob, Jane, the students, they aren't just sitting there gasping and hiding their eyes. They are genuinely curious. They bring a completely scientific mindset to this bizarre event.
This is honestly my favorite part of the whole story, because if a table starts dancing in my house, I'm just running out the front door. I'm calling the police. I'm calling a priest. What I'm not doing is running to the closet to get testing equipment.
But that is exactly what they do. They decide to run a literal physics experiment in the middle of a seance.
Okay, walk us through the setup here, because this is just wild.
Okay, so the table is levitating, or at least it's resisting gravity so strongly that Carl, in the note specifically point out that Carl is a big, strong college guy. He physically cannot push it down to the floor.
So you have a football player-sized guy wrestling a card table, and the table is winning the match.
Precisely. So what do? They go into the bathroom and get the bathroom scale.
I love the sheer domesticity of that. Like, hold on, spirit from the great beyond. Let me just grab my step scale from the bathroom. Excuse me, ghost. Can you hold that pose for a second?
It's brilliant, though. It turns a ghost story into actual data. They place the bathroom scale right on top the levitating table because they want to measure the upward force. So they ask AA, the spirit, to build up the pressure. They want the table to actively resist them. Then Carl pushes down on the scale until the table legs finally manage to touch the floor.
Okay, so the physics here. They're measuring exactly how much force is pushing back up against them.
Correct. They're measuring the lift, the resistance. And the data they got is staggering. It took between 70 to 90 pounds of human pressure to force that levitating table back down to the floor.
90 pounds. That's a massive amount of weight.
It is huge. Think about lifting a 90-pound dumbbell at the gym. Or imagine a really large German Shepherd jumping up on your chest. Now imagine that exact same force is just an invisible field pushing up from the surface of a wooden table.
And Rob really analyzed this, right? He didn't just jot down a number and call it a day. Because my skeptic brain immediately goes to, well, maybe Carl was leaning weirdly or pressing at an angle.
Right, and Rob anticipated that. He noted that this wasn't just subconscious twitching. You know how skeptics will often say, oh, you're just lifting it with your knees or you're pushing sideways to create friction? But if you or I just lean heavily on a table, we aren't generating 90 pounds of sustained upward lift without realizing it. You'd have to literally be deadlifting the thing.
Right, and they were cross-checking each other too, weren't they?
They were. They were very diligent about the parameters. When Carl was pushing on the scale, the others were making sure nobody else was pushing down on the other side to create some sort of hidden lever effect. They were constantly checking the feet, the placement, ensuring they weren't tricking themselves. They were treating it like a university lab experiment just happening in their living room.
So we have 90 pounds of invisible upward force. That's scary enough on its own. But then we have the flying incident. This part is genuinely chilling, but also kind of funny in a slapstick way.
It really is. Rob describes the table actually vaulting into the air. At one point, Carl is trying to hold on to it, and the table essentially twists Carl's arm completely behind his back.
It put him in a hammerlock. A piece of furniture put a human being in a submission hold.
It did. A literal wrestling move. Rob notes that the twisting motion was extremely rapid. Carl insisted he wasn't doing it himself. And frankly, why would anyone twist their own arm painfully behind their back while trying to hold down a table? And then the upside-down moment happens. The table vaults all the way up to the ceiling.
To the ceiling, like the legs are pointing up.
Yes, it is hanging upside down, high up in the room, while Carl is just barely holding onto the edge of it.
That completely defies physics. Gravity should be bringing that down immediately.
And here's the specific detail that really sticks with me. Rob tried to describe what that resistance actually felt like. He didn't say it felt like another person pushing back. He said it felt like two magnets repelling each other.
Ooh. I know exactly that feeling. You know when you try to force the north poles of two strong magnets together? It's slippery, it's bouncy, but it's incredibly firm. You just can't breach that gap.
Exactly. invisible but entirely palpable. It's a localized force field. That is the true nature of the energy they were dealing with on that Wednesday. But that was just the warm-up act.
Right. That was just the prequel, the dress rehearsal.
Wow.
Now we get to the main event, Friday night, November 24th, 1967.
The atmosphere in the house has changed completely by Friday. On Wednesday, it was 4 people. Quiet, focused, almost academic. Friday night is a party.
It's total chaos. The notes say the room is absolutely packed, 12 people in total. You have Jane and Rob, the college students. Claire and Carl are back, plus a whole bunch of guests. There's Bill and Peg Gallagher, Pat Norelli.
It's incredibly high energy, and it's a real mix of true believers and hardcore skeptics. Specifically, we have Bill Gallagher. In Rob's notes, he is explicitly referred to as the Jesuit.
Which honestly sounds like a pro wrestling nickname. In this corner, weighing in at 180 pounds of pure doubt, the Jesuit.
It sort of is his role in this context. Bill is the ultimate skeptic here. He's the voice of, this simply cannot be real. He's standing there with his arms crossed, smiling that sort of condescending, knowing smile. And the table starts acting up again. The main attraction for this night is pressure.
Everyone wants to feel the magnets.
Exactly. But it turns into a bizarre competition. On one side of the table, you have Bill Gallagher and Pat Norelli. They are pushing down with absolutely all their might. They're trying to ground the table to prove that human physical strength always wins out. They want to force it to behave like normal would.
And on the other side,
The table and Jane. But Jane isn't even touching it at this point.
wait, let's highlight that. She's not touching it. That is a crucial detail. If she's not making physical contact, she can't be manipulating it with her knees or her hands.
No contact whatsoever. Rob notes that Jane is standing completely away from the table. She's actually shouting encouragement to the table like a cheerleader at a high school wrestling match. She's rooting for the table to win.
That is such a surreal, funny visual. You have these grown men sweating, straining, pushing on a piece of furniture, and Jane is just in the corner yelling, "Go, table, go! You got this!"
It's totally absurd, and the room is loud. Rob calls it a palpable peak of mental and physical excitement. It's an absolute frenzy. It's hysterical group energy.
And the snap.
The climax.
Yeah.
The table doesn't just tip over this time. The top actually splits in two, and a heavy leg is violently torn free from the central pedestal.
It didn't just break, it basically exploded.
It crashed hard to the floor. Rob was totally stunned. He describes his own reaction as being delighted and appalled.
Delighted because it's undeniable proof of something cool, but appalled because he instantly knew he had to fix it again. Great, now I need to go buy more wood glue.
Exactly. But let's really look at the forensics here. Because Rob didn't just sweep up the splinters and move on. Rob, being an artist and a very careful observer, deeply examined the damage afterwards. This is the exact detail that convinces me something extraordinary was happening.
Tell us about the nail, because this is the part that genuinely keeps me up at night.
So, when Rob had repaired the table previously, he used a 2¼ inch nail. It's a very decent-sized, thick iron nail. When the table shattered that Friday night, that specific nail was found bent at a perfect right angle.
A perfect right angle, still inside the wood.
Embedded right in the detached leg. And several smaller nails were pulled completely clean through the solid wood.
See, that is where it gets incredibly real for me. You can fake a table tipping, you can even fake a little bit of levitation if you're really good with leverage and distractions, but you absolutely cannot bend a heavy 2-inch iron nail inside a block of wood just by leaning heavily on it.
No, you can't. That requires a shearing force that is incredibly specific, concentrated, and violent. You cannot do that with flat human hands just by pushing downward. The wood would simply splinter in a completely different way. This was a massive force applied internally.
It's violent. Like you said in the intro, that's not a fun parlor trick. That's a bar brawl with a ghost.
So the table is now in pieces on the floor. The skeptics are probably looking down at their own hands going, did we do that? The believers are cheering. The room is buzzing with adrenaline. It's exactly that wired feeling you get right after getting off a huge roller coaster.
But the roller coaster wasn't actually over.
No. And this is exactly where the entire tone of the evening shifts dramatically. The fun and games are over.
Enter Seth.
Yes. The chaos settles slightly, and Jane goes into a deep trance. Her voice changes. Her entire physical demeanor changes. And Seth comes through. Now, if you're listening and you aren't deeply familiar with Seth, he's usually very articulate, highly philosophical, and sometimes quite humorous. He's usually got the vibe of a wise, patient old professor. But tonight, He is not amused in the slightest.
The schoolmaster has officially arrived, and the class is in major trouble.
Rob explicitly notes that Seth's tone was deadly serious.
I have the direct quote here. This is so crucial because it recontextualizes the whole meaning of the night. Seth comes through and says, I am not here as the host of a party. I am not here for your amusement or pleasure.
He is completely shutting the carnival down.
And then he follows it up with, I am here for your education and training. He really emphasizes the stark contrast. He's basically looking at them and saying, you people think this is a game.
Right. He is drawing a very hard line. He's telling them, you guys are treating this incredibly potent, profound energy like it's a cheap plastic toy.
It's like handing a toddler a running chainsaw and then clapping when they manage to cut down a tree.
Basically, yeah. And this leads us directly to the core philosophical nugget of this entire deep dive, the concept of unused energy.
This is the part that really made me stop and reevaluate everything. Because reading this, we naturally assume the ghost broke the table. We assume Accelity did it, or maybe Seth did it to show off. We assume it's an external, supernatural force acting upon the room.
But Seth corrects them immediately. He says, and I'm paraphrasing the broader concept here, that the sheer energy used to violently shatter the wood actually came from the people standing in the room.
Whoa, let's just pause there. That is a massive paradigm shift.
Seth specifically says, energy was used to shatter the table. There is such energy in each one of you, but you are not taking advantage of it.
So wait, Seth is telling them that Bill, Pat, Rob, Jen, all these normal people, they all have this massive latent power just sitting inside them. They are the actual battery that powered the destruction.
Yes. He is saying that the human psyche possesses a raw, natural energy that is entirely capable of snapping 2-inch iron nails and shattering solid oak. But what do we actually do with it? We completely suppress it, we ignore it, we bottle it up inside, or, in this rare case, we subconsciously project it outward onto a piece of furniture just so we can be briefly entertained.
Man, it's like we all have a literal nuclear reactor sitting right in our chest, and we're just using it to power a single nightlight.
That is a brilliant analogy. Seth is clearly frustrated because they are all standing there looking at a broken table and going, wow, cool magic trick. Instead of asking the obvious question, wait, if I can subconsciously do that to a heavy wooden table, what can I consciously do with my own life? If I can generate 90 pounds of psychic pressure, why can't I change my miserable career? Why can't I heal my own body?
That really hits home, because day to day, we so often feel totally powerless. We feel like life is just something that happens to us. We're victims of circumstance. And Seth is standing there saying, no, you literally have enough raw power to break iron. You just have no idea how to access it.
Exactly. And he points out that the only time we do access it is when we accidentally leak it out in these chaotic, unguided bursts, like a poltergeist event. It's totally wasted energy.
That is so deep. And the thing is, Seth doesn't just keep this as some vague general lecture. He gets incredibly personal. He looks around that packed room and starts taking aim.
Oh, he absolutely roasts them.
Let's talk about the roast of Bill.
Poor Bill Gallagher. The skeptic. The Jesuit.
Seth singles him right out, doesn't he?
He does. Seth addresses him directly in front of everyone. He specifically calls out Bill's flippancy and his fond smile. You know exactly the smile he means. The one that says, oh, isn't this cute? I'm just humoring you crazy people.
Ouch. And Seth tells him, it does you no good to smile. That is chilling. That would wipe the smirk right off your face in half a second.
It really is intense. But Seth isn't just being petty or mean. He is actively analyzing Bill's core psychology. He tells him that Bill uses that smile, that thick layer of skepticism, as a shield. He's using it to hide from his own internal abilities.
So the skepticism isn't actually about seeking the objective truth at all. It's about a deep fear of the truth.
Exactly. Seth tells him, it is yourself with whom you must become friendly. He's challenging the skeptics in the room not to believe in ghosts, but to believe in themselves. He's saying, you are immensely powerful and you are secretly terrified of that power, so you just stand there and laugh at the dancing table to cope with it.
That is such a fascinating flip on the usual dynamic. Usually the skeptics think they are the brave, rational ones facing the cold, hard reality of the universe. And Seth is saying, no, you're actually the cowards hiding from the much bigger reality. You're hiding from your own reflection.
And that perfectly sets up the next major section, reality and responsibility.
Yeah.
Because Seth drops a definition of reality right here that is totally mind-bending.
I have that quote. He says, reality is the table that moved, the table that shattered.
Think about the massive implication of that statement. We usually assume that reality is just the solid, predictable, boring stuff The floor stays on the floor. The table stays in one solid piece. That's the real world.
Right. Gravity, physics, commuting, taxes, the rules.
But Seth is arguing that if physical matter, like the table, is actually fluid and unpredictable, if it can fly around and break apart from sheer mental energy, then our rigid, safe view of the universe is fundamentally wrong. The stable, boring world is the actual illusion. The breaking, dynamic, energy-driven world is the true reality.
So the table breaking isn't some weird glitch in reality. It is reality.
Yes, the glitch is our own limited expectation. Seth strongly warns them against being complacent. He tells them point blank, to be alive is to learn and grow. He's demanding that they finally wake up. He's basically saying, stop pretending the universe is boring just so you can feel safe.
And he doesn't just expect them to take his word for it either. He throws in some very specific, undeniable proof, doesn't he? Because, I mean, it's one thing to lecture a room full of people on high-minded philosophy. Anybody with a good vocabulary can do that. It's an entirely different thing to look at a stranger and tell them their highly specific medical history.
Right, and Seth often does this to firmly establish his authority, especially when there are new, skeptical people in the room. He needs to prove beyond a doubt that he's not just Jane's subconscious making things up to sound smart. So he gives a completely unprompted health reading for a guest named Dick.
What exactly did he see with Dick?
He diagnosed a very specific lung and circulatory issue. But he didn't just give a generic, oh, you have a cough. He traced the core origin of the problem all the way back to Dick's mother's pregnancy. He stated that she had a low blood count and a circulatory difficulty that she wasn't even consciously aware of at the time, and that underlying condition directly affected Dick's physical development while he was still in the womb.
That is wildly specific. That is definitely not something you just guess by looking at a guy at a party.
Not at all. And then he turns his attention to Carl, the college student who was wrestling the table earlier. Seth does an impromptu past life reading for him.
Let me guess. Carl was a professional wrestler in a past life. Or a carpenter.
Not quite. Seth identifies him as Aquila, who was a German woman descended from Romans.
A German woman?
Yes, living in a small village during the era when the Huns swept down. Seth even describes her husband, noting he was a stonemason. And tragically, she died trying to protect her children during an attack.
Wow. That is incredibly heavy.
And Seth then traces that same soul forward to a subsequent rebirth in 1826 France, where he lived as a merchant.
I have to ask, why does Seth bring all this historical and medical stuff up right in the middle of a lecture about a broken table? It almost seems random.
It serves as his proof of work, but it's also about establishing a profound connection. He is actively showing these guests that his vision extends so far beyond the four walls of that Elmira living room. He sees the microscopic hidden details of their cellular health, and he sees the vast sweeping timeline of their eternal souls. It completely validates the heavy philosophical points he's making about energy. He's essentially telling them, I know exactly who you are, far better than you even know yourselves, so you really need to listen to me when I tell you how energy works.
That makes the earlier scolding so much more effective. You can't really sit there and argue with the guy who knows your ancient past lives and your mother's secret medical chart better than your own doctor.
Exactly. It completely silences the room. The skepticism just evaporates.
So the session finally wraps up. The intense energy in the room settles down. What is the post-game analysis for all this?
Well, practically speaking, Rob is left with the cleanup.
Poor Rob. He really is the unsung hero of this entire ordeal.
He really is. He has to get the glue out and repair the table yet again. But in doing so, he deeply reflects on the actual physics of what they all experienced. He writes extensively about the magnet versus leverage debate in his notes.
Expand on that a bit.
Rob notes that when you push a normal table down using physical leverage, like shoving it with your body weight, it feels a very specific way. It feels dead, inert. But the intense resistance they felt that Friday night was entirely different. It was that down and away pressure. It felt active. It wasn't just a heavy, dead object resisting gravity. It was an object actively pushing back against them.
It had agency. It felt alive.
And then Seth returns briefly at the very end of the night for one final mic drop.
Oh, I love this part because Jane is just completely exhausted by this point, right? She's been shouting, trancing, dealing with a dozen people.
She is totally wiped out physically. But Seth booms through one last time. He tells them flat out that his energy is far superior to Jane's physical capacity. He says, my energy is not of this time, nor of this place.
And then he leaves them with one final wish.
Make peace with yourselves.
which really just brings the entire night full circle. The physical war with the table wasn't actually about the table at all. It was about the internal hidden war going on inside the people.
Precisely. The external violent destruction of the wood was just a physical mirror reflecting their massive, unacknowledged internal conflicts.
So what does this all mean for us? For you, the listener, who is maybe driving to work or washing the dishes right now? Most of us don't have dancing tables in our homes.
Hopefully not. Well, if we distill the key takeaways from this whole event, first, we saw a standard table fight a human being and genuinely win. We learned that 90 pounds of sustained pressure can be generated by spirits, or, as Seth strongly implies, by our own subconsciously projected mental energy.
That's the absolute biggest takeaway for me. We are all walking around with this immense, untapped power. We're so much stronger than we think we are.
Secondly, we learned that treating this phenomena as mere amusement is fine for a minute, but it is definitely not the goal. The real goal is recognizing and harnessing that potential.
Seth seems to be desperately trying to say, stop treating magic like a cute party trick. Treat it like a fundamental biology lesson. It is a literal part of who you are. Stop laughing at it, stop running from it, and start actively using it.
And that leads directly to my final provocative thought for everyone listening today.
Lay it on us.
In the session, Seth said, "As tables move, so indeed do souls fly." We spent this entire deep dive talking about violence and destruction, breaking table legs, bending heavy iron nails, twisting a guy's arm. But if the human mind possesses enough raw, latent energy to completely shatter a solid oak table,
Ooh.
what could we possibly build if we decided to use that exact same energy consciously?
That is such a beautiful, haunting thought. Instead of subconsciously breaking the furniture, could we consciously build our own health? Could we build lasting peace? Could we fix the broken things in our lives?
Could we construct entirely new realities? That is the ultimate challenge Seth leaves us with. Are you just going to keep breaking the table, or are you going to finally build something new?
I absolutely love that. And hey, if you are listening to this and you want to go down this rabbit hole yourself, and trust me, it is a very, very deep one, please don't just take our word for it.
No, please go read the actual source material. Rob's detailed notes are absolutely fascinating.
We highly encourage you to study the Seth Material books directly for yourself. You can find all of this at the New Awareness Network website.
That is sethcenter.com/early sessions.
Definitely check it out. It is truly wild stuff. Well, that is it for today's deep dive into the table that fought back. Try your best not to break any furniture this week.
Thanks for listening.
See you in the next deep dive.